Something very interesting just occurred to me, and I think you could argue that it's one of the problems with the education system, um, and it's that uh, school can help you to hone your skills on certain topics, on certain subjects, and with certain things and areas of your life. But again, how well it does it all depends on your learning style, whether tactile, visual, or you learn by reading, or you know what I mean. But there's something that people may not fully address about school, and it's that there's so much direction and hand-holding. Even though they don't like to admit that there's hand-holding, they try to make it seem like each area of school does less and less, and granted, sometimes it does, but sometimes, or more often, it just seems like it doesn't. And what I mean by that is, normally in school, you're given a subject, or you're taking a subject and you're given a task to do, and they tell you how they want it done, and more often than not what the topic is going to be about, when you're going to need to research on. But is this an accurate representation of the workplace? In some cases, yes, but as we have been learning, more recently anyway, in our society as it stands now, one of the very successful avenues for people is entrepreneurship. So I guess that this part of the video only really applies if you're looking at an entrepreneurial path. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, you need to learn how to think for yourself, how to come up with an idea, most likely original. That's usually the best kind, even though it's becoming more and more difficult to do that, especially nowadays. But you need to be able to think in a frame of mind that is different than other people, and it doesn't have as much construction or hand-holding. And in order to do that, you need to be more or less taught how to. And that's not something the school normally really does. Like, there's a lot of projects that I've had throughout high school where, in history, you're told to research on a specific person, maybe. In some cases, school does do it right, and I think that's when they tell you, do a research project on whatever you want. Now, that does happen sometimes, and maybe it all depends on your teacher, but at least I think we can all say that we've had experiences where it's been very directed, and we feel a lot of times like, I think at least in high school, depending on the amount of programs that you have made accessible to you, you may feel like you've been put in a box previously. And you might even feel like that in university or in college. Now, it all depends on how you're pursuing stuff and how you want to learn, right? But the current system has been instituted by someone else or a group of other people that think that it's the best. But why does that make it the best just because they think it is? Is it the best for you? Well, really only you can answer that. And so I guess what I'm saying is, ask questions, not only to others but to yourself. Why am I doing this? Why is it important to me? Why should it be important to me? Should I continue doing this? What am I gaining from this? And how will it help me? Those are just some examples. And it's very important to ask ourselves these questions, because if we're not asking questions, then doesn't that affect our learning? It's good to ask questions, because if you're doing a lot of things in your work that are blindly led by someone else who told you should do that because you should do it, and just simply because they said so, then is that really worth it to go on and spend copious amounts of money and time? And if you have been asking questions, then good, because that's a really wise route to go about. But if you're not, then I encourage you to start asking questions to yourself and to others. And to do maybe a little research into what you're really doing and why you're doing it, what you want to do. My suggestion is, do something that you love to do. And if you're not quite sure how to make a living off of doing something that you love to do, then you should try to find a way to do that. And that's what some of the greatest entrepreneurs probably have done. Now I say probably because I don't have any specific examples, but I'm sure if you do a quick Google search, you'll find a lot of people that made a successful living off of doing what they love. And granted, that means that you might have to put in a lot of hard work. You probably most likely will, because the greatest things usually do take a lot of hard work. But that's something that we just need to be prepared for. And if we really, one thing I've kind of learned a bit more of, especially being in college, is that if you love what you're doing, then it doesn't feel like as much of a pain to work hard at it. Like with a lot of the stuff in game dev, I will spend a good amount of hours on something, but it doesn't feel as much of a pain as maybe it would before with like doing French homework or writing an essay or something. Thing. It's well, to be fair, I did like several of the essays that I wrote, but French homework was a different story. It wasn't my favorite class, but my point is do what you love, and if you're not loving what you're doing right now, just if you're in high school, then just I recommend either switch courses, and if that's not possible, just try to put your head forward and just push through it, and then choose what you like to do as soon as possible. But if you're in a position in your life where you can switch things up and start doing what you love, then I suggest start doing what you love as soon as you can, within reason, of course, and within good wisdom. Like, don't be reckless, but in a wise way, just start to pursue what you love and to do what you love, as long as it's a good thing, and yeah, just really think about it from the point of mind that we don't really know when our life will meet its end, so make every moment count. And if you knew that, I guess this is the classic cliche, if you knew that today was your last day, what would you do differently? But what even if you didn't go that extreme? What if you knew that you were only going to live another 5 or 10 years? Then how would you construct your career differently to enjoy those last 5 or 10 years? And I'm not saying that we should always be nervous of like, oh, death could come at any minute. Like, I'm not saying that at all. We shouldn't think like that because it's not really healthy. But at least let that kind of point of view inspire you to make your decisions count more, because you might live another year, you might live another 80 years, depending on your age. You might live another 50 years, 60, 70, etc. But nonetheless, whatever you're doing, make it count for something good. Make it count for something great. And do what you love doing. Because in reality, isn't life too important to do something that you hate all the time? And yeah, so just some general thoughts. Another side note is that I find it interesting that school holds tests so important, because tests are not an accurate depiction of the workplace. When are you ever going to be in the workplace presented with something, a project, and you only have one chance to get it right, and it's a pass or fail kind of thing? That I don't think there's a whole lot of things in the workplace that work like that. Normally it's a project you're working on, and you're doing trial and error before release of the project, and you're working on something until you get it right. And then once you get it right, within that deadline, the project's compiled and then eventually put out there. To my knowledge, that's how the workplace works. And it's funny that so much of our courses work on the premise of tests and having to pass an exam to pass the course, or at least having to do well in the course, and then ultimately the exam really determining a lot of your final fate in that course. Maybe not a pass or a fail per se, but how well you excel. And that's something that I guess can be a bit frustrating, and that's why I really like it. I like it when a lot of courses have final projects. Now, sometimes, yes, it might be easier to just write an exam, but in reality, you could argue it's more valuable to have a final project to really flesh out what you've learned, compile your ideas and your skills, and in some cases make something great. Like, for example, in our Game Design Foundations class, we're making a board game, and at the end of the class, we get a copy of that board game. You're actually, now what's better, writing an exam or getting a finished project that you've worked on and that you're proud of, and that you've made yourself and with your team, and that you get to keep and use, like you play the board game for however many years that you keep it in good condition for. I just think that there's a better return on doing something actually physical with what you've learned, instead of just writing an exam. And so that's just thinking out loud, just kind of some stuff that came to me, some stuff that may have been on my mind for a little bit, but just in different ways. So I hope that what I've said has spoken to you, and I guess I hope you agree with what I'm saying, but even if you don't, that's fine, because we're allowed to think differently, and have different opinions. But I hope you enjoyed, and thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.